And welcome to the webinar today. My name is Matt Jacobson. I am the Online Learning Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. I'd like to remind everybody that we are recording this webinar today. Recordings will be posted on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours. And Illinois PD credit is also available for anyone attending live today during our webinar. Evaluations for PD credit will be emailed to our live participants also within 24 to 48 hours as well. If you have any questions today, please feel free to type those questions into the chat or the Q&A. If you're using the chat today, please make sure to switch the blue drop-down menu in the chat window to read everyone so we can all read your questions and benefit from the responses. Today, we are going to discuss the question, can you teach or promote student creativity with technology? And our panelists today are going to help us explore those answers. So Eric, Brian, Emily, here we are once again. Emily is an instructional tech coach in the southwestern or the central west part of the state. Eric up in Chicagoland area is our regional ed tech coordinator up there. Brian is our coach from the Freeport North Boone region. So today's essential question is, how can educators promote student creativity with technology or technology tools in our classrooms? To kick things off, Emily, do you have some ideas on how we might answer that question?
I do. So I think the greatest and most important role that we have as educators is being able to offer these opportunities to our students to be able to create in all sorts of different ways and offer those opportunities in the classroom. And creativity and that idea of technology can just take it to the next step. And what are ways that your students might be creating that you haven't even thought of before? And so for me, the idea of teach creativity is really me as the teacher opening up those opportunities to let my students practice creativity, because I feel like that's a muscle that they need to practice. And through opportunities and solid teaching, that's we can get them there. Eric, what do you think?
Thanks, Emily. So for me, teaching creativity really comes down to three things: content, inspiration, and opportunity. Content meaning anyone who's innovative or in a creative field, they tend to be people who really consume a lot of information and consume a lot of production that other people put out there. And so great artists are always looking at other forms of art, right? So the more that we can give students background knowledge and opportunities to see other forms of creativity, the more content they have to draw from. Inspiration, so they should be able to see you modeling creativity and creative thinking, and they should see the creative works of their fellow students as often as they can. So as much as you can publish student work and let them see others' ideas, I mean, often the beginnings of creativity are imitation of other great forms of creativity, and that's okay. When you think about sports figures, copying their favorite player's moves, or an artist copying how someone else draws something in order to learn that style first. Inspiration is often imitation first. And so the more they see creative works, the better. And then finally, opportunity. Give them those reps, give them those opportunities. Like Emily said, the more opportunities they have to attempt to be creative in the classroom, the more that they start to build that comfort level with being a creative person. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. And it's, it's a hard thing to define, saying what is creativity, which is, one of the big things is you want to inspire somebody to take a risk. Creativity can't be created in a jar. You have to have that mindset with students that it doesn't have to be right, because creativity is right because you're creating something brand new. So who's to define that it's right or it's not right? And so it's creating that kind of safe space in the classroom for students to be able to explore, to find something new, to get something wrong, to understand why they got it wrong in their own eyes, because that creativity is created through you as the facilitator, not just the guiding, not just the teacher of the content, but the facilitator of the creativity. And then, yes, absolutely. Giving that time to be able to showcase off work, building off others' ideas. We see it all the time, and obviously the creative fields of art, music, and culinary, being able to build off one another's things. And so that same mindset should be brought to the classroom of being able to see someone else's work, see what they're doing. How can I even recreate or create something new for myself? And so giving that ability to take those risks in a safe space in the classroom and allowing students to, get it wrong in their own eyes, not you telling them that it's wrong.
So, a lot of times we might look at traditional classrooms and some opportunities that students have maybe to write an essay, or maybe they're just writing their story, diagrams, fill in the blank. Like, those are all opportunities that we would see in our classrooms and ways that students can practice learning. But in an environment where we're trying to foster and build that creativity, maybe instead of just your story, maybe it's your story on a green screen and kids are making movies, or you're doing interactive ebooks, designing new things and act out a scene. And today we're going to be able to share some ideas that we brought to be able to maybe foster a little more creativity in your classroom.
Well, and that's a great segue into the next slide and the next question for the panel. And this is really the meat and potatoes of our panel discussion today. So what are some of those activities that, as Emily points out, we can use to foster that student creativity? And what are some tools that can help us support that? And Emily, I bet I know something that you would like to talk a little more about when it comes to student creativity.
Yeah, so admittedly, I Seesaw fangirl here is one of my favorite. I've been on a webinar with Matt before and shared my love of it, but I think probably why I love and promote Seesaw so much is because of the multitude of tools that they offer for students to be creative. And looking here at some of these pictures that I'm sharing, is we have a student who can share their story, and you can see, though they drew that picture creative, I don't think you can ever get away from the beauty of an 8-year-old's art. So that story that an 8-year-old drew their picture and put it on there, but then using technology takes that story from just being in place on a bulletin board in your classroom where no one can read it, and now all of a sudden you're able to connect to other students. They have a larger audience, even using the blog features, so that others can connect with what they're doing, giving students that authentic audience so that their creativity can really grow and they feel like it's going somewhere. Also inside of Seesaw, we had a lot of fun with video, and you can see that turkey project right there. My students did a persuasive essay on why you should not eat turkey for Thanksgiving. And the students then drew their own turkeys. And we used another app just as an add-on. We did some little smashing. We used ChatterPix, and we actually had the turkeys telling the story of why you should not pick them. So we were doing a traditional class work. Students were pointing out their points of view, 3 reasons why not to pick me, having a counter argument, and then they showcased it in a creative way. And after you get them talking turkeys, they start to, want to use that for lots of different things. Inside of Seesaw, we also would then, and I smashed it with a lot of stuff, so you can see there's a Google slide on there. The students then put all of our turkeys together, and we were able to have a gallery walk kind of thing. So students could look at and notice the other work that other students had and the different reasons why they wanted you to have a different turkey. The picture in the bottom right was the custodian at the school that I worked at, and this was a project where students were creating book reviews and how they wrote those. And inside of Seesaw, each of the things that you make also has a QR code. So you could put that QR code on there, and then not only was their book review in that 2-dimensional form of the picture and what they wrote, but they were also able to narrate and tell you a little bit more about the book. So creating that opportunity to share those things. So those are just some great ways that we use Seesaw to promote creativity. And I think the important thing is that these are some options that we did that were very similar in their outcomes, but there were also a lot of opportunities that were personal to students. So I didn't have samples for those, but for students to be able to create on their own. So where you might start the project, it might be something else that they end up creating beyond, and something that you as the teacher never even envisioned. So that is one that I wanted to share. All right. This next one is a way for students to be creative using some of the digital tools, maybe in the music area. And if you haven't explored Chrome Music Lab yet, there's a lot of neat ways that students can use that. We're actually using it in a classroom right now, connected with some makey-makeys for students to be able to make their own songs and to connect some computer science with that. Students can collaborate on the shared piano. The picture to the right of the wheel is it ends up doing music like Kandinsky. So depending on how the kids are making their artwork, they end up with different music projects. The beatbox.co, I actually have to give credit to a bunch of junior high kiddos for finding this. Students were they were making a Google site for an argumentative essay, but instead of a traditional essay, they were posting it on a website, and they had their pros, they had their cons, and some of the students took those and they went and made a podcast. They did not want to use any canned music that was already made for them. And so the students went on and made their own loops of the music to introduce their podcast. So again, just offering those opportunities outside of what we might think that they need to do and letting them explore. All right. Last one are two, I guess you can call them apps or programs or websites to use that have also encouraged some creative options within the classroom and those different things. And that is Google Draw. I don't think Google Draw gets enough attention for what students can do to use that. And apparently I was on a turkey theme. This was another turkey on here. But using the open tools in there and then showing students how, you know, we're always sharing, don't use copyrighted images. How can you make your own? What can you do? And inside of this, inside of Google Draw, letting students come up with what they want to make and that freedom, and then taking their images, putting them in their Google site or their Google Slides, going from there. We're actually using, with that project where the students are using the makey-makeys, they are drawing their prototypes of how they're creating their own instruments. They're working collaboratively in Google Draw with their partner to draw or to make their example of the instrument that they're going to make and how they're going to connect their makey-makeys. Another one that I had not heard of, and I just learned about this year, is called Photopea. And a lot of times in schools, we might have great ideas of what we want to use and how we want to use those, but funding may be an issue. Photopea or SAPA might be an issue. Photopea is a free website that acts very, very, very much like Photoshop, except they don't have to log in and it is free. So it does limit their saving ability and those kind of things, but you can see that picture in the middle there. Students were actually practicing with taking a historical photo or a black and white photo, recoloring it, and then having that showcase the different feelings or how color can actually change those pictures and just some of the tools that are in there. So my biggest thing about creativity is that if possible, let the kids go. And when they say, can I, you say, well, I don't know. What if? What's next? How do you try it? Why not? And also when they go, well, I can't, say, well, what's in your way? How can I help you to get to that next step? And what do you want to try? So those are just some things that I think help to inspire some creativity. All right.
Thank you, Emily. And I love those responses to things that students might come up to you and say. Great for promoting creativity. So I'll share a couple of tools as well. I'm going to refresh because I made a quick update. Are you guys still seeing the screen share? Okay, great. So one of the things that I get asked the most by teachers is, what can I do besides Google Slides? My students have done Google Slides to death, and we need a different way to present. And to me, these are three great tools that are applicable to any content area and really any grade level. That are great ways for students to present their knowledge and to demonstrate creativity. And those are Adobe Creative Cloud Express, which is great for digital storytelling, Book Creator, which is awesome for making ebooks and comic books, and Tinkercad, which is a 3D modeling app. And so I'll just quickly show you a few examples of projects in each one of those. And these are all ones where anytime students are going to be sharing their knowledge and demonstrating their knowledge, whether it's an assessment, a formal assessment, or if it's just something where you want to create an opportunity for them to share what they know. Don't have them do another Google Slides. I love Google Slides, but have them try something different. And these are all free tools that they can try. First is Book Creator. So here's a couple of examples. This is an example that I made for my students before they did this same project in science class, where they had to create a rock cycle stories. They had to not just tell me about how rocks change in the Earth's interior through the rock cycle, but they had to actually write a story with a rock character going through all of these changes. And so we used Book Creator to create that story. And as you could see, I could drop in these nice comic book panels and some cool fonts. And there's actually when you have this set of slides, you can actually click on it and hear my very cringy audio recordings that are built into it. But that's an awesome way to include their student voice in what you're doing, because they can record their audio and embed it directly into the book. As you can see, there's thought bubbles and speech bubbles and action words a la Batman, right? I've got the nice POW there, and I can drop pictures in. One of the things that I've heard from a teacher before that broke my heart was, I don't know if there's any creativity I can do in math class. And the answer is yes, there's plenty of room for creativity in math. And here's an example of a project that I helped a teacher with. They were working on fractions, and they wanted to make sure students were able to demonstrate fractions in multiple different formats. So they asked students to pick a few fractions, or they were given a list of fractions, and they had to make an ebook of 10 pages of fractions, where they had to demonstrate the fraction in its typical format. They had to show it as a decimal. They had to then pick any visual that they wanted to demonstrate that fraction, and then show two equivalent fractions. And so this was an example page from that book. Unfortunately, I don't have an example to share, but you can kind of get the idea of what the students would do on each page there. And then if you'd like, this is a link to a Book Creator book about Book Creator. I was training a group of teachers on Book Creator, and I said, well, what better way to train them than to make a Book Creator book? But this can be helpful to you if you want to train other educators on this. You can totally use this. You probably want to replace my Bitmoji, but if you don't, that's cool too. But you can see it's very simple to use. There's literally two buttons that do everything: the Add Objects button and the Edit Objects button. And you've got all these awesome multimedia options built right in. There's a pen for free drawing. There's an auto draw tool that lets students scribble a picture, and then it automatically translates it into a nicely drawn icon. So if your students say, I'm not a good artist, I can't draw, it has a built-in tool that will make them a good artist. So there's no excuses left. So really cool stuff there that you could do with Book Creator. My second that I want to demonstrate is Tinkercad. And Tinkercad is a 3D modeling software. And you might say, wait a minute, I'm not a STEM teacher. What are you talking about? I hear 3D modeling, I think 3D printing. You don't need to have a 3D printer. You don't really even have to have background in 3D modeling. Your students do 3D modeling at home if they play Minecraft. All right, so many of them do, and they're accustomed to the idea of building a three-dimensional world or a three-dimensional object. Tinkercad is a program that they can use to create three-dimensional models that, yes, could be 3D printed, but I've worked in situations where I didn't have access to a printer, and I just let students use it as essentially a three-dimensional drawing tool. It has built-in tutorials, and there are plenty of pre-created parts that they can put into their model to build awesome things like this. But there's so many good ideas you can use in any content area. For a science or STEM teacher, have them build a structure or build an invention or innovate something new or modify something existing to make it better. For social studies, they can build a cultural artifact from a specific culture you're learning about. For ELA, they can model a scene or model an object or model a key point in the conflict to demonstrate that they understood what was going on. They can create a tool that does something that previously was unable to be done. I just saw actually another really great prompt I saw on Twitter was design the control panel of a time machine. Imagine you created a time machine. What would the control panel look like? What a great innovative prompt to get someone really thinking. And that's something that they can model right here in Tinkercad. And then there's math, again, math, right? There's creativity, there's room for creativity in math. They can definitely, because there's measurements and different units involved on this program, you can definitely have them create scaled models of things and make sure that they understand ratios, proportions, and so forth. So a great tool to use is Tinkercad, a bit of a learning curve, but with the support and tutorials they have built in, I think there's plenty of room for you to get comfortable with it. And most importantly, your students will jump in and just run with it. Finally, the last one I want to share is a favorite of mine as well. It was formerly, where did my slide go? Wait for it. There we go. It was formerly known as Adobe Spark. Now it's got a really long title called Adobe Creative Cloud Express Video. Long title, awesome and easy to use app. Essentially, you start out with it looking like Google Slides. So if you're looking for a good transition from Google Slides, this is a great one. The slides are listed across the bottom and students build their slides as they go. But on top of that, they're able to add just simple objects, text, one short amount of text, 1 or 2 photos tops. And then if they want, instead, they can add a video onto a slide, but usually text and photo is what you stick with. There's limited amount of options for them to play around with fonts and colors. And you might say, well, that's stifling creativity. But anyone who's done any kind of even Google Slides projects knows what will students spend most of their time on. They'll make those rainbow fonts where every letter is a different color, or they'll have really loud clashing colors, or they'll obsess over a bunch of different fonts. And so you're not really stifling it, you're more channeling their creativity and giving them some basic options to pick from in terms of themes. And then all of their energy goes towards, how do I use just a small amount of text and a single photo or two to capture what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of symbolism involved with that, right? To be able to convey a message with just a photo or just a short amount of text. It's a really powerful presentation strategy that's different from the Google Slides where students might copy paste an entire paragraph and attempt to read it all in front of your class, right? So they're limited in the amount of text and photos. And here's the grand finale. They can click a button and voice record over each individual one of those slides. So they can essentially present and create a movie out of some simple photos, some words that they have to choose that are meaningful, and then record their own voice up to 30 seconds per slide. And they can add some background music that's built in if you'd like. And all of that automatically gets mashed up into one video for you. So it takes all of their slides with their voiceovers on the slide, mashes it into one video and gives them a link. And now they've got a link to their work. And you could have a listen party. So remember I talked earlier about how important it is for students to see other creative works and to model creativity to others. You can now, instead of having 3 days where students are slogging through their presentations, you have one day where they have a listening party and they get to watch everybody's video all together at once. As you can see, I get very excited about this tool and the other two that I shared, but I will now pass it to Brian so he can share some of what he's excited about.
Yeah, and I love just hearing different ways. I mean, as you've even collaborated together, hearing new ways to think about something differently. And that's where I kind of want to shift away from just talking about tools, which tools are awesome. But sometimes when we're in the era of SAPA, it's hard. But how do I shift my thought to that creativity? And so there's a wonderful, wonderful group of educators that developed what's called the EDGE protocols. And it's really about teaching less or teaching better, working less, and achieving more. And it's really shifting how you're framing how you teach. And there's a lot of great templates that I would go over in just a second. But the main idea is that they're meant to promote collaboration. Art's not created in a vacuum. Creative thought is not done solely on their own. It's really inspiring each other to have that intelligence to be able to have creative thought. So on the next slide, there's 4 quick ways of how these can all be done in the classroom through EDGE protocols. Fast and the Curious, it's really not one that's super inspiring creativity, but it's one of those ways that you can get into using them quite easily. What it is, it's basically continuing reteaching, but building off one another. You can use tools like quizzes or Blookit or any of those formative quizzing tools, but I'm only focusing on something that I need to reteach. I don't need to keep thinking about what I don't need to reteach. And then we get into more of the creative ones. Emoji power paragraphs are extremely, extremely fun. Today I was in a bunch of different classrooms working with kindergartners, first graders, and fourth graders. All I do is I put a big emoji wheel on up there. Click, 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 all 700 something emojis, obviously remove the ones that are not appropriate for school. and you just give them an emoji. And the things that will be written as a sentence just from one little emoji is wild, is just extremely creative, things that you would never think about. And kids are writing based upon just seeing a little emoji that they've been used to seeing forever. So those emoji power paragraphs are one of the great ways of using edge protocols. Cyber sandwiching, that's where definitely for a lot of your text heavy classes, whether that be your ELA, that be your social studies or history classes, where you're basically providing the frame for students to collaborate together. It's just really promoting that safer space in the classroom for students to collaborate together, but also seeing what are they doing the same. And then another one of my favorites is just simply a thin slide. It really makes me think of Thin Mints, which then gets me a little hungry, but then I could add that to my thin slide, which is the bare bones of saying one slide, one picture, and one word. And that's all you get. That's all you can do. But it's students then choosing, why do they choose that word and why do they choose that picture? And they really get those gears turning in their head. And thin slides can be used in any subject, absolutely any class, and really at any time, but it really gets those creativity juices flowing. And so edge protocols are just phenomenal for being able to get your students thinking and creating differently and really kind of putting something new into the classroom. So we at the LTC are oh, you go ahead, you're good. Are obviously big fans of creativity. I wanted to make sure that I included something right at the end. We are hosting Ed Tech Next at the end of the summer. It's a great way to wrap up your summer, or some of you guys are still in the middle of summer, but feel free to join us for that one. We will all be there, and we are definitely excited for that one.
Wow, that was a great kind of whirlwind tour through the minds of some of our LTC staff and their ideas on teaching creativity and promoting creativity. What questions do you folks have who are joining us in live at our webinar? I'm going to unmute everyone's microphones and allow you to talk. If you'd like to ask any questions, you can use that button in the bottom left corner of your screen to unmute yourself. Ask your question, share an idea. You can also use the Q&A and the chat if you would like to kind of participate in our panel discussion today.
Matt, while they're working up and thinking about some questions, I'll go ahead and add in a little something else. Sure. For me, as a teacher and supporting teachers, that hardest part is knowing that we might not have all the answers and that we might not be able to foresee all of the stumbles that the kids or the students are going to have as they're working through it. But knowing that when they reach a point where they want to do something else and they reach a challenge, but they overcome it, that's really where that learning opportunity is coming from. That's where they're growing those creative muscles. So even though it can be super uncomfortable, and maybe definitely had projects that have not turned out the way that I envisioned them, but I know that my students were really the ones creating and practicing that instead of them just trying to get what I wanted them to get out of it.
I just found on the New York Times website, I'll share my screen here briefly. There we go. There are a number of images that can help inspire creative writing. And this, I'm going to scroll a bit. Something as simple as this can help inspire creative writing. Here's just an unusual photo that is not what you would think you would expect to see in normal everyday life. Use that image to spark those creative juices and get those ideas flowing through your classroom, your kids' minds in your classroom. All kinds of different resources are out there. We've really only scratched the surface of them here.
And Matt, you just reminded me of another New York Times similar very similar site, which I'll put in the chat, called What's Going On in This Picture. And that was one that I used to use I still use for media literacy, but it's an awesome prompt with very ambiguous real life pictures during current events. And it's a great prompt for students to be able to talk about what they think is going on and why, and have a little persuasive writing. I have a little bit of a debate, but it's a great spark for creativity.
Mhm.
I think another important point about creativity is to think and look at the idea that it's not just about the end product, is that, really having and celebrating the students' work along the way, in that it might, the struggles that they overcome or how they collaborated or where they found additional information to help them. Those are all important pieces of the creativity process, or creative process is every step along the way, not just the end product, and celebrating that
Process. Right.
I think it's big. I mean, we always say all the time as educators that children are the future. We're empowering and creating the future. Well, how do we allow them to create the new future for us? We have to give them that really agency to be able to create, to really kind of almost screw up on their own terms, to be able to say like, hey, all right, I can see where I could fix it, and I'm taking the agency on my help. I don't have that any learned helplessness where somebody is the arbiter of my knowledge. I am the person that is in charge of what I need to do. And so really giving that space for students to create and think independently, which we try to preach all the time as educators. Well, we got to put our money where our mouth is sometimes, and give up that little bit of freedom that they have to create, to allow them to do something new.
Yeah, and how often do we see kids when, at times we do have an expected outcome of what we want, where we want them to go. And sometimes if that's super, super directed and we don't let them break away from it, when they are offered that free choice of what do I don't know, you decide, what do you want to do, using, a student choice board and having to choose different things. They want to choose what the teacher wants them to choose, because sometimes that's what they're used to. And so allowing them to feel the power of them choosing is important too.
Mhm.
That agency, I think Brian said.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it brings me to a question a lot of teachers might have, which is, so where do I start? Like, there's lots of tools for students to be creative. Like, how do I get creative with my lessons? I'm feeling like things are stale, and I always say, go back to your standards and start with the standard. And one of the best advice I ever got with that is that the standards are the floor, not the ceiling, right? So you look at a standard and you don't think, well, don't keep it in a box. So I'm looking now at like third grade writing standard, write opinion pieces on topics or texts supporting a point of view with reasons, right? That's a type of standard that comes up pretty often. So it doesn't mean you have to be limited to just them strictly writing an opinion piece and writing a paragraph of text, which is important. They need to write. They need to know how to write an essay, but can they also build on that by demonstrating their opinion in other ways? So think about that standard and say, what other ways in my life do I see opinion pieces occurring? Well, I see them on the news. I see short videos. I see ads, right? So how can I get my students writing their opinion? Yes, writing a structured set of sentences, but then also turning that into some other creative work. So for me, it starts with going to the standard and thinking creatively about how students can meet that standard in more than one way.
Yeah, and I will add on to that, Eric, because I think you're spot on with that. I have a science teacher that I'm working with, and their next unit was on understanding the elements and how they react with others, and those kind of different things. So we came together and we said, okay, what are ways that, and I kind of call it the Mary Poppins of teaching, a spoonful of sugar. How can we make it fun and engaging and entertaining, and have them really exploring it on their own? I don't need to be the one standing up there and telling them everything I know about it. How can I get them? And again, through that spoonful of sugar, getting them to find it. We offered 3 choices for them. Choice 1 was for them to create it's a Google slide doc. And I always think start with what you know too. Like if you're comfortable there, start there and then get ready to try something new. But starting with a Google slide, and the students created an interactive lab scene. So they made a Bitmoji classroom lab And all around the picture, the kids put in hyperlinks going to the different pieces of information that they had learned along their way about their element. Their second choice was to, again, starting with a Google slide, but then to create, and Eric, I might take back that Adobe Creative Cloud Express to them, is creating kind of a documentary style, narration over their slides. And then the third option was we were going to use Book Creator and have them take their element, turn it into a personified element, and what kind of story would that element be in? Like, what would they, how would they interact through their day, or what would be a problem they might run into? So just kind of some different options, and then allowing the kiddos, well, they're junior high, but they're still kiddos, allowing them to try some different things. And yeah, so.
Yeah, no project is a silver bullet. No project's going to fix everything. You won't know until you try. And you know what? You got like 174 more days, right? Why not try it today? Because you don't know the outcome of what you're going to have. And if you're sticking with the same stuff over and over again, first off, I get bored as an educator. If I did the same thing year after year, even if I'm just building upon the curriculum that is required to me by a district, I still want to find ways that I can infuse creativity. And so I want to instill that same knowledge. So I have to model my creativity as a teacher as well. And so we're all trying to find the best way to reach kids at this time. We're all trying to find answers. Okay, let's create.
We do have a comment in our chat right now. I teach special ed, and my kids tend to stick to things they are familiar with. We've sort of touched on this already. Are any other suggestion to help students break out of their shells?
So I was going to jump in with that one, Matt. I'm glad you saw that. My thought would be, we all love creative works with students, and we all have a lot of experience on this panel. So we're going like 0 to 100 quickly, right? So you might just try some guarded creativity with the students and pick one of those tools or one of those ideas that we mentioned and just ramp them up slowly. If there's something that that they're into, that drawing really connects with them, if there's a certain thing that is just their jam, see if you can build on that. So I guess the basic idea there is start small, start with one idea. And it can be difficult, especially too, if they're not used to having total choice over what they do. That freedom can be both liberating and scary for students as well. So it's okay if it's a little bit more structured at first, and you're just incorporating one idea or one tool or one thing that you're doing new, and then just see how they kind of respond to that and go from there. So that's my 2 cents, but I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say.
Well, I'll add on to that, Eric, is that I think you're right, that idea of garden. I found a lot of times when students weren't quite used to that freedom is that if I did a teacher model, so for example, in our creative writing piece, if my character moved to a new city, inevitably I would have 14 stories where the main character moved to a new city. And so one of the ways that we try to work with that is, if possible, not giving too much of a teacher model so that they don't feel like they have to copy what I did. Now, in some ways, that is, they need a model, they need something to see. So another way that I would do that is sometimes offering multiple models and then saying, okay, what can you change inside of, what this is? Because I think the first stage of creativity is noticing that you like what somebody else did and then just taking and iterating it just a little bit to make it your own. Look at how many TikTok videos we have where one person starts it and everybody changes it, and every time it has a little bit different flavor to it. That's okay to get started with that. And then, using the power of yes and, okay, yes, you can do that. And yes, and can I show you this tool? And then, letting them see what they want to do with it. But Brian, how about you?
Interest. If it's something that I find interesting, you can find that the students find interesting. Like, for example, I have no background in anime. I've never watched anime in my life. The amount of anime that I knew to teach 8th grade English and somehow engage them in learning verbals. I wanted to make sure that I found something that was interesting to them, that I could take that standard and concept that I wanted to do and then get them engaged in it. then I can start thinking about all those same interests that I have. How can I create a project that is going to be creation based? That is something that it's good. They are going to model after, because they're going to need some kind of sentence or frame, so to speak, to go from. But starting with basically, is it something that I find interesting? Because from there, it'll just continue to spiral to different paths and avenues as they continue to mature. Just really just engaging in like what they like.
And if I could ring in also, sometimes, as was pointed out, you don't want to put them in a box, but you can show them examples. We used to do a project where we would create our own monument to something that we had studied in history, but we had to make it up on our own. So you show them pictures of existing monuments, existing items, and they say, okay, go home, find something from your toy box, Legos, Lincoln Logs, race cars, your sister's dolls, something like that. And what can you make out of those? Maybe if you can get them started by using their hands, using an analog, and then transfer that into the digital, that might allow your kids to kind of break out of that and become more creative. So just an idea. Any other questions from our audience today? How about our panel? Anything else you'd like to share today?
I was just going to say, I think that, opening these opportunities and allowing for these kind of creative things in your classroom, creativity is the currency of the future. We're looking at ways that, people are engaging with the world in different ways. And so anytime we can give kiddos that opportunity in the classroom is really important. And we do have to give grades, but I think also having students have that risk in there, but safely within grades. Like, we have certain criteria we need to meet, but also allowing the variety of their choice to still fit and get those points is important.
I think that's a huge point, and also a good answer for Jody's question, because if one of the things that students tend to ask when they're accustomed to having to always have a right answer is this right? How do I need to draw this? How do I need to create this? Like, how do I, so they're always looking for that validation that they're giving the right answer and filling in the right blank. And so just kind of using that language in class regularly of being comfortable with mistakes or comfortable with some ambiguity, I think sets the stage well. And preemptively letting them know in an assignment, like, I'm not grading you on your creativity per se. Like, here's the content that I'm looking for. I want you to express it in a way that makes sense for you. And as long as you can explain it, there is no wrong answer there, right? So I think if you establish that with students, it's a good way to kind of get them comfortable with that idea.
Exactly. Have fun, provide resources, no potential pitfalls. Life's too short, school day's too long. I mean, it's you just gotta have fun. Being a teacher is fun.
Absolutely. Well, folks, I think that about wraps things up for us today. I'd like to thank everyone on our panel for taking some time out of your very busy schedules to share your ideas and wisdom with us. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance that our webinar recording will be available on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours. I'll also be sending out evaluations to everyone within 24 to 48 hours as well. Later this month, we will have more webinars on how to promote and increase student creativity in your classroom using technology tools. So if you're interested, please check out all of our webinar offerings on our website, ltcillinois.org/events/webinars. Thank you all very much for your time today. Have a great afternoon.